Hello, everyone, and welcome to the thru My Story podcast. My name is Sarah, and I'm an alcoholic. Be sure to subscribe, like, share, and comment on our videos so that YouTube will send them out to alcoholics looking for recovery. Today, we have Laura C. sharing their recovery story and experience, strength, and hope with us. They're going to tell us what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. Please keep in mind that this will be going on an Alcoholics Anonymous website. So without further ado, I give you Laura C., whose sobriety date is April 3rd, 1987. Welcome in, Laura.
Thank you. My name's Laura and I'm an alcoholic. I started drinking real young. I stole Dad's beer when I was 2, but I won't go into all that. I drank all his beer on a hot summer day, and he was not delighted. He was not happy. But he didn't take it away from me either, which was surprising. And then, probably around 8 or 10 years old, I was babysitting. 10 years old, 12 years old, I was babysitting. I would start stealing out alcohol, people I babysat for. And as kids growing up, we had parties on the major weekends, 4th of July, Labor Day. We had big clam bakes in the yard. The parents would be drinking and we'd be having soda. Us kids got into the beer. We didn't get into the highballs too much, but we got into the beer. So around 8th grade, we're smoking dry goods, it's known as hashish, some marijuana, and I was drinking alcohol. And I didn't start drinking alcoholically yet. I was still able to drink in safety. So around high school, 10th grade maybe, I think back, and I would drink before school, during school, after school, and at night. And I would drink alcohol. I would get up and drink whiskey and put it in my cereal. I drank for about an hour in the morning, and then I took some booze with me to school in a jar and drank that through the day. And when I got home, I'd be smoking dry goods. Boy, was I off to a start then. Life got worse. My junior year in high school, I was driving, so I must have been 16 and a half. I would drink, and I could count my drinks, 16, 17 drinks in my night. And I would drive drunk, land in promiscuous places, and I was promiscuous and wasn't a lot of fun, but I didn't get hurt that much. I experienced the DTs before I knew what the DTs were. I had the spiders on the wall crawling at night, and oh, it was pretty scary because I didn't know what it was. My parents weren't alcoholic drinkers, but they would drink on the Warrior weekends sometimes. So I quit school in my junior year to go to work full time. And then I weighed 284 pounds, and I got into some dry goods to help me lose weight. And I got down to the early 200s, 184, 180, 180, I think it was. Boy, my head was messed up bad. I was paranoid. I was drinking, and I was thinking people were following me, and that wasn't a good scene in my life. So then I met this woman, and she was a vegetarian. She still drank alcohol, but smoked pot, and she didn't drink like I did, but she liked to drink wine. So we would drink wine together, and I became a vegetarian for probably 5 years maybe. And no sugar, no white flour, no processed flour, no red meat, no. I would eat fish in the very beginning, but then I stopped eating fish. And so I went down to 180 with that and the speed. Totally changed my life, and I was able to keep the weight off doing the vegetarian diet. and exercise and walking everywhere because I'd already had my car repossessed. I'd already left my apartment because I was behind in the rent. Boy, things were getting bad. So then I gave up on myself and I gave up on my friend and I walked away and I went home to be with my mother and father. Boy, was that a big mistake. My mother was sick. She'd been on bed rest for almost all my life. She was like Joan Crawford and Mommy Dearest. She was, we did dishes one night and oh my God, she was yelling and screaming, you'll learn how to do the dishes and clean those dishes. And I don't want any spots on the glasses. And well, she behaved like this from time to time. And her episodes got worse. I didn't like them. I moved away and I went to school. I went to UMass. I was studying how to speak English. My English, I couldn't pass the English test, so I had to do English. And then I enrolled in social services, sociology. And I was still drinking. I can remember showing up for class and being so drunk that I could barely walk. And the teacher would say, Laurie, you're your own worst enemy. And I didn't understand any of that. I drank more and I just kept drinking. And then I met another friend who drank alcoholically, but was a functioning drunk, could hold a job and make executive decisions and drive drunk and not get caught. We got into a big slap down fight. I left and then there was a restraining order put out on me. And back to Mom's house I went. I couldn't even take out the trash right. That wasn't fun. So I drank, not as alcoholically as I had been, but I was drinking to the point that I didn't like the booze. I didn't like the taste. So that was that with that one. I went to Women in Electronics. I flunked out of UMass. Took a course in Women in Electronics, how to become an electronics technician. And I had a few drunken days and drunken nights and missed class. And the teacher said, Laura, I don't know what you know and I don't know what you don't know. Because I was the type of person that would just call out the answer. And sometimes I was right and sometimes I wasn't. So we would go out once a week and drink in the bars in Cambridge. And I got lost in a garage one night. I couldn't get the car out. I kept banging into the walls. That was my Maverick. I finally got out of the wall. I finally got out of the garage, but it took me over a dozen tries to find the opening to get out. That's how drunk I was. Nobody took my keys. Nobody said anything to me that I remember. I came back to Littleton after we had this big fight. That's where I grew up, was Littleton. So then I started drinking alcoholically again. My mother said, you're a lot of fun when you drink. I was having her, she was running from the cops too. She didn't pay her excise tax or something. I don't know. She was in a nursing home and I took her out driving around one night because I wasn't going to let her go home and get caught by the police. And she thought that was a lot of fun. But my drinking escalated then. I started drinking quarts and fifths. And I was in a relationship that was not good. It was very codependent. I do for you and you owe me. It was violent at times, episodic drinking, quarts and fifths of Jack Daniels in the end. And I couldn't even hold a job. I had a job every day. I had a new job and I couldn't either go to work or I walked out on the job because I just wasn't happy. I just had to go drink. And I don't know how I ever afforded it, but it was pretty costly. I never thought I had a drunk story, really. My friend Karen and I went down to Florida. We were down in Fort Lauderdale, and Joan Rivers was playing. So we wanted to see Joan Rivers, but we were drunk as skunks. I was driving drunk, and my friend Karen was drunk. So we show up at this building where she's playing, and the door's like the Wizard of Oz, where they're looking for the wizard to come out. The door's big, was a sliding glass door, and I'm banging on the door saying, just tell her Laura and Karen are here to see her. Like she knew who we were. She didn't know who we were. We didn't barely knew who she was at that point. So that was one of my drunk stories. And at the same time, in this drunk story of Fort Lauderdale, I had 2 hotel rooms at the same time, one at the airport and one at the beach. I was always leaving. I was never happy where I was. Didn't know happiness came from within inside. And I always wanted to leave. I would drive drunk to the hotel and I would sit at the pool bar and say, oh, I'm booked on all the flights. The flight's out of here to go back to Boston. We kind of laughed about it, but then I was AWOL because I was working for the Boston Post Office. And I wasn't back at work when I was supposed to be. And it snowed and it rained and in Massachusetts. So when I came back out of work for the first night going back to work, I slipped and fell. And I broke my ankle I have a plate and 6 screws in my right ankle from the use and abuse of alcohol. Because I was drinking in the morning. When I got out of work, I was drinking. So life went on. It wasn't good. I wasn't good. I was totally lost. I had lost myself. I needed to seek attention and affection from somebody or something else. I just couldn't stand on my own 2 feet. And then I got into another jam. I almost killed Karen because our drinking got out of control. I really could have crossed that fine line. But for some reason, God intervened and stopped me because I don't know how I was stopped, but I was stopped. Oh, yeah, I got sentenced to Framingham one time for driving drunk. For driving drunk, I pleaded it out and got a fine. And then I drove after revocation, and they cited me for driving my car. I was coming home from work, and they cited me. And slam goes the gavel, MCI Framingham, 7 days. Oh, and that's what caused me to go on that trip to Fort Lauderdale, was the anxiety and just the fear of getting the top bunk at the jail and prison, and what was I going to do, and how was I going to live, and how was people going to push me around and make my life worse, and I couldn't cope with that either. So my drinking just kept going on and on. Karen walked out after I almost killed her. I just shut the door, shut the lights, turned everything off, sat in the room, was in pensive doom. I was in counseling, but the counselor just said, don't drink, get active, do things, like take a walk or get an activity. So I said, yeah, okay. I couldn't do anything like that. I couldn't concentrate. I didn't have an activity. I was trying to go to work. I couldn't even focus on work. I was obsessed. I had a compulsion, obsessive compulsive thought process. How could I get back what I couldn't have drinking? I was obsessive compulsive with drinking, and it owned me. When was I going to get the next drink? Well, probably 10 days, maybe 15 days went by, and I did not drink, but I was still sick. I was booze sick. So what happened was I found myself alone, and I had a half a shot of Jack Daniels. And I said, well, I can't go to AA tonight because I've been drinking. But I'd be walking down the hallway, wringing my hands and sweating and just anxiety ridden. I showed up at the AA meeting on April 4th, April 3rd. Before I get the 4-3s mixed up. On April 3rd, 1987, I showed up at the AA meeting. And of course, my neighbors were there. They said, oh, we're so glad you made it, Laura. Of course, I couldn't handle that. I didn't even know what to say. I didn't even want to look at them because I figured they'd already read about me in the newspaper. They'd already opinionated themselves about me, and like I'm so important. I guess thought I was so important. So they said show up at the business meeting, and the business meeting was the next week, and I showed up. And I went to the business meeting for the meeting. Coffee maker position was open. And I raised my hand and they said, "Oh, that'll be good for you. Why don't you make the coffee?" So I made the coffee and then I couldn't make a decision on what kind of coffee to buy. I'm not drinking, but I'm still obsessive compulsive. Keep wishing and dreaming. So I met this friend in AA and her name was Paula. And she said, "If you don't want to drink, call me." And this is the beginning of my first week, 2 weeks of not drinking. And so I met this Paula, and she turned out to be my best friend in AA for the first year. I would call her, and she'd say, "What meeting are you going to tonight?" I said, "I'm not going to a meeting tonight. I'm not. What meeting are you going to?" And so I went to meetings because she'd asked me what meeting I was going to go to, and I would go. And then I heard get a sponsor. And then I asked this lady that was familiar to me, somebody that I had known in my past that I drank and did dry goods with. And she'd been sober. She was my sponsor. And she should say, "Call me before you do anything irrational. Call me." Like I knew what rational or irrational was at that point. I could just barely get function. I didn't believe in God. I didn't believe that there was a God worthy of helping me because I grew up with a restrictive God that had rules and regulations to his belief. So I just discarded that right away. And Judy said to me, "Get down on your knees and ask for help." I said, "I don't know who to ask for help for. I don't even believe in God." She said, "Just believe because I believe." So I can remember I was 4 months sober, away from a drink, going to meetings. I get down on my knees and say, "Okay, here goes God. I don't believe in you, but Judy believes in you. And I'm going to just act as if you're going to help me. Just help free me of the obsession to drink alcohol and the compulsion of the obsessive compulsive thoughts in my head." And I would say the serenity prayer over and over again to keep some kind of sanity going in my life. And so back at the AA meeting, made coffee, couldn't decide whether to make decaf or Colombian. Of course, the old timers wanted the decaf. And I'd say, "I'm going to show them we're going to have Colombian." Of course, everybody would be flying high off the Colombian coffee because they're not used to drinking it. Then they told me to sell raffle tickets. Oh my goodness, that was like, oh, I was so afraid. I was afraid to have anybody talk to me. By this time I could look at somebody, but I couldn't share myself. I couldn't tell anything about myself. I would bring the dogs with me. I had a Pekingese and a Japanese chin. We would talk about the dogs. We wouldn't talk about my alcohol or my alcohol problem or my life as an alcoholic. So that worked out okay for a while. I became a greeter. That was pretty hard. I couldn't do that job. I reach out my hand and talk to a newcomer and say, "Welcome." As easy as it sounds, as sick as I was, I couldn't do it, but I tried. I was the secretary for the group, and I liked that. And then I was taking other people around to meetings with me, and we'd do the anniversary meetings, would show up at anniversary meetings and hear the speakers. And I was hanging out at Fort Devens during the day with the soldiers at the AA noontime meeting, Fort Devens noontime meeting. And the soldiers were working the steps. And that was impressive to me because I'd read it and I wouldn't get anything out of the step. They'd be explaining to me how the program worked and how the steps were working. So that was good. And then I became the commitment exchange person for the group where I booked meetings. And I did such a good job with that I booked the meetings up 9 months, I think it was, in advance. So we had commitments going out and coming in, and groups coming in and going out. We traveling because I was in the circuit of AA. I was going to meetings and reaching out, sharing that I was a commitment exchange person, and I'd go down to the GSR meeting and I would talk to them and find out how the structure of the group went. That AA starts with the group and works up. It doesn't start with the bureaucracy and work down to the it's group decisions. And I learned a lot more than that. But today I can't talk about it because I don't remember it too well. So I was approached by somebody to commit to working AA and bringing AA into the prison. Shirley pre-release, halfway house, pre-release, Cottage 9. They asked me to do it for, I don't know, maybe 3 months. I did that so well. I booked 6 meetings in 6 days for 3 months. And they said I was doing such a good job, I could keep it. So I did that. I freed myself, and promises started coming true of the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous. I started to know a new freedom and a new happiness. But I read the big book too, the man who mastered fear, the fear of fear. Wednesday is wash day, the freedom of bondage. It was important to me to read those. And I'd read them and I'd reread them. Sometimes I'd read the Alcoholic, because it was short and simple and I could concentrate on that. I would be taking people to meetings, and we'd have a car full of meetings, and we'd be laughing and joking. And I sponsored people, and I had a sponsor, and I did real well for 3.5 years. And then I was around meetings. I'd go to meetings, but I wasn't active because I felt like I was burning out from doing the commitments for 6 days. I passed it on. Well, I showed up at their 5-year anniversary, and I saw one of the fellas get his 5-year medallion from AA. And he was so proud, and I was so proud of him, because he had worked hard, and he did it behind the wall, behind the prison. I felt joy. I never knew what joy was, being brought up the way I was. And I actually felt good. I had unconditional love for this fella, and I was proud of him, and I just was joyous seeing him blossom and carry on and work his life in his program. I went down to Arkansas, the Bible Belt. My goodness, that was a lot of fun. That was different. They didn't talk of God so much, but they had the same principles. You don't drink and ask for help and go to meetings. Don't pick up that first drink. Call somebody before you drink. Build a network. Get a groups list. Get a meetings list. And I got along real well with them down there. And then I came home again, went back to meetings. And then I got a job working on the Space Hubble telescope down in Maryland. I was sober there. And that was nice. I didn't drink, and I went to meetings. I'd been around my AA for a lot of years, but I hadn't been in it and working it actively. My sponsor had moved, and I didn't get another sponsor. I felt the effects of being dry. And then I had some physical problems. And then I got hurt, and then I got onto the dry goods again. I said I didn't drink alcohol, but I was on medication for prescription medication that I didn't abuse. It still made my head think differently. But my people that I'd been talking to, the counselor and the doctor, and that say it doesn't change your sobriety, you didn't drink. I think that's controversial. AA is about alcohol, dry goods. And we had one of the old timers say, but I did Valium. I didn't drink, but I did Valium. And so she recruited herself back to year 1. She had like 26 years, and she started all over again. I was in Littleton. I had moved now to elderly housing for the handicapped. I had lost my house because I just totally mismanaged the money. I had a failed Title V. It brought me heartache, but I couldn't keep it. I couldn't figure it out. And I used to rent rooms. And I'd rent to some of the guys at the prison. They called me the can opener because out of the can and into a room. So I did that for a short amount of time. But I didn't like renting the rooms though, because I got some wild people, you know. I moved to Dorchester. Well, first I moved back in with Karen in a trailer. She woke up one day and didn't like the way my attitude was and had me taken out by her social worker into a respite house. Respite, I'm going to say hotel, but it wasn't a hotel. It was a hospital. I had my dog. I had a Shih Tzu. And then my cousin, I called my cousin. I said, hi, how you doing? And this is what's going on with me. And he said, I got a place that you can live in. That's with my cousins over in Dorchester. So we went there the Sunday morning, big book meeting and step meeting, Freeport Street in Dorchester. And I would go around and I would, you know, reach out my hand and say, hi, my name is Laura. And this one lady that hadn't seen me in a while, or she didn't remember me, she said, hi, my name's so-and-so. And I said, my name's Laura, and I've been around for a little while. And then she automatically just shook her head and turned to somebody else and started talking to them. And that hurt my feelings, but I didn't hold a grudge. And I didn't move the rock, as the zoo group said. I didn't hold a resentment, because we all handle things differently. But I did have resentments with Karen, that relationship. So 1987 was my last drink. I haven't had a drink. And I was in counseling because, you know, depression, and I was depressed. And they said I needed a counselor. So I went to counseling. And the counselor says, you need to join AA. I said, okay. You need to get back to meetings, Laura. So as hard as that was, I couldn't go to the in-person meetings. So she found the zoo crew meeting online and said, try this. So I thought it was wonderful. I tried it. They welcomed me, and the speakers that would be holding the meetings would be welcoming me and made me feel better. And I could now feel better about myself and how AA worked. And today I'm a part of the zoo crew, and I listen to meetings during the day, in the morning, at night, all different times of day and night. They have meetings, and it's really been beneficial to me because they love me when I couldn't love myself again, and they accepted me, and they didn't know everything about me, and I couldn't tell them anything because I was ashamed. I have a sponsor today, and we're going to be working the steps. I'm getting back into working the steps because that's the fundamental of the program of the AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, is the step meetings. And the steps would help me change my character. And that's what's important to me today. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What is your biggest suggestion to people that come into AA to keep that sobriety going? And even if they get a dry patch, you know, what would you suggest that they would
Reach
do?
out their hand, tell somebody they knew, like I did, and let the program happen and work the program. Take the suggestions and work them, and develop a power greater than yourself and believe in it. Because that's what helps me, is my power greater than myself.
How'd you find it in you to pull yourself out of that dry patch? So like, how'd you really find it in you to?
It's miserable.
Yeah.
When you're miserable long enough, you find a way out, you know?
Yeah.
I just knew I was happier in being sober. That's why I came back. The counselor was right. Bringing the treatment facility into the AA meeting, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Laura. Thank you for sharing your story with us today. Laura, and I'm sure our members will enjoy listening to it. Have a great day and keep trudging the road of happy destiny. To our subscribers, we hope you enjoyed listening to the story and have subscribed and liked our videos. Please feel free to share our videos along with our website and podcasts.